Well, you are in for another treat with the Plant-Based Eating for Health show. This is Kathleen Gage, your host, and today I am talking with Natalie Pelto, who is with Blue Life RX, which I am very curious to talk about Blue Life RX because we have the blue zones, and those are the zones where a lot of people will be eating plant-based diets. So let's jump right in. Natalie, how are you?
Are you ready to live the life you deserve? Do you want to feel vibrantly healthy and reach your optimal weight without dieting while being kind to animals and the planet? Then you're in the right place at the right time. Get ready to hear from doctors, nutritionists, experts, and everyday men and women committed to creating a powerful life in mind, body, and soul through ethical food choices. Welcome to Plant-Based Eating for Health with your host, certified plant-based nutritionist, Kathleen Gage.
I'm great. How are you?
You know, I am fantastic. I'm fantastic. Let's start with you sharing when you became a plant-based eater, a vegan lifestylist. Let's start with that.
Yeah. So my story is similar to yours. I was not born into a family that embraced plant-based eating, but I used to lead detoxes and still do. And it was so interesting. As I started leading detoxes, I noticed that the week that we could remove meat and we could be predominantly plant-based, I felt the greatest. I felt amazing. And so what I ended up doing was I started to extend that time. And then I started to bring in, when we did reintroduction weeks, I started to bring in less and less meat. And just naturally, my progression into plant-based eating happened. And then I met my business partner, who was very much so a plant-based physician. And we did our studies of the blue zones. We have our certificate, and she is board certified in lifestyle medicine. Mm-hmm. But that whole immersion of understanding longevity, vitality, and how they can be so interconnected with eating plants was really what has maintained and has propelled us to teach others about it.
I love it. Now, how long have you been plant-based?
I'd say I'm going on 2 years.
Okay. Yep. And what about your business associate? How long has she been plant-based?
So she's been plant-based, I'm going to say, for a year more than myself.
Okay. Excellent. Excellent. And she's one of the rare doctors that is a plant-based doctor. You know, it's interesting because the people that I talk to that really have challenges when they go talk to their doctor, if their doctor doesn't embrace this lifestyle, it's actually an uphill climb for them. And fortunately for me, when I went plant-based nearly 5 years ago, my doctor was very aware of plant-based eating. She's not 100%, but she was fully supportive. And then she saw my numbers and she was like, keep doing what you're doing, because I dropped like 50 pounds and my numbers got just so excellent. And, so good stuff there. But you started a company called Blue Life RX. And before we get into that, your certification, did you get that through the T. Colin Campbell Institute?
So she is, my business partner is actually board certified through Weill Cornell and through the ACLM. And we did our certificate through the ACLM and the Weill Cornell they do their certificate based on preparation for the board certification exam.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Yeah. So how did that lead into you starting Blue Life RX? And let's talk about what that is and what it took to start it and what your mission is. So kind of a three-part question there.
Yeah. So we used to go on these long walks, my business partner and I, before we were business partners, and we would talk about these dreams that we had of changing basically the healthcare system in a way that was effective, but also in a way that would go through change management. But we had these big visions of seeing different outcomes for patients. Now, my story was very interwoven with lifestyle medicine in the sense that my son, when he was much younger, was fighting a nonverbal severe autism diagnosis. And for us, we had already seen the impacts of lifestyle. And when we did our certification, it pieced together everything I had done to support my son to a completely different outcome. Mm-hmm. My son now is independent, does not have a diagnosis at all. You would never have known he went through that process. And when I had done multiple nutrition certifications between our journey of like learning about lifestyle and the Well Cornell certificate for lifestyle medicine. But that one certificate, it pieced it all together. Like it took everything we had done that I was looking for and put it into this pretty little package called lifestyle medicine. And so she was very interested in my story, but she was also so impacted by plant-based eating because she also had ADHD and she came off of all her meds, and she was able to completely change the outcome of her skin and her acne and her parents. And she started talking about it as an Emerge physician in the Emerge department. And so as we talked and our dreams got bigger, I started in the business. I started working towards this outcome, and she was working about 3 hours away, and she was getting so burnt out. She was so tired and she was frustrated and she's so positive. Plant-based people honestly are like the most positive people on the planet.
I like to think so.
And she was so burnt out though. Like she would come from these like long Emerge shifts, and I would spend like a week trying to rebuild her body with like nutritious foods and everything. And the truth is that she finally decided to take a sabbatical. And she came and she did her board certification. The whole point of it was to finish and study her board certification into lifestyle medicine. And then we decided to go into research so that we could do an implementation study in the hospital setting in this town that we live in for lifestyle medicine, to give patients another outcome, because that's where her frustration lay. So we have a business that encompasses both adults for lifestyle medicine, but also for children whom they haven't done enough research on with lifestyle medicine.
You know, I love hearing what you're doing, because I just actually talked to a gentleman who started a plant-based beef jerky company, and it's all plant-based, no animal products at all. And he said he dealt with major depression and bipolar issues before he went plant-based. Not only has he dropped over 100 pounds, he now has no diagnosis of bipolar or depression. He said it's a life changer. And so to hear what you're saying about the ADHD and all the benefits that come from a plant-based diet, with the people that you are impacting, what would you say is the greatest challenge for them to embrace this way of life? Because in some ways it sounds like a miracle cure, and it is. And so people go, oh, you know, it can't be possible. Well, it is possible. We have less depression. We have we have fewer diseases as a whole if we're eating 100% whole food plant-based diet. So what would you say are the challenges that you and your business associate face as you educate people, as you take your information out to the community?
Well, she is this, like, I call her the sun. If you've ever been in her presence, it's like literally being in this like sunshine state of like love. And so it's really hard to, for people who meet us to not feel inspired in some way. But what we have discovered, and especially for myself working with children, right? We know picky eating with children with autism is like 99% of our kids. So that's been one of the biggest challenges. And same with adults. Like a lot of adults steer away from our trying new recipes or trying to embrace it. A lot of it is mindset work. Like we've noticed that so much of this is all about how to inspire people, not just to start, but to maintain.
Right.
And so that's what we focus on. We focus a lot on habit stacking, habit building, trialing new things. We work in the community to cook. And I have an entire picky eating course for adults and children that they
I
can
love
go
that.
through.
The picky eating course. I love that. And before we go any further, I want to remind people that you are listening to the Plant-Based Eating for Health podcast show. I'm Kathleen Gage, your host, and I'm talking with Natalie Pelto, who is with Blue Life RX. And with Blue Life RX, how do people find you? What's the easiest way?
So our website is the easiest way. It's www.blueliferx.com, and all of our links and everything can be found within there. And I also offer a webinar that's free for people to understand the lifestyle medicine pillars and their impact in children.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
So, yeah. And they can just right as soon as they log into the website, they can get to that.
So the average person that comes to you, and I know there is no real average, but for somebody who comes to you and they're really wanting to have solutions, what's the journey that you take them on with the products and services you offer? You have the free webinar. They go to your website and they can sign up for that, I would imagine.
Yes, that's
Okay,
right on the
excellent.
front page.
So
Yeah,
go to
but
blueliferx.com. That's blueliferx.com. And we'll put that in the show notes. But okay, so they've done the webinar. Now you've piqued their
interesting.
interest. What is the next step?
So it all depends on if they're picky eaters or not, adult or kids. Doesn't matter if they are picky eaters. I usually tell them the foundations is to, even though this is a lifestyle supportive system, nutrition is very, very well known throughout the world. People are much more interested. Like when we talk about mindset work or we talk about lifestyle, they're always looking at me like, okay, but I think I could eat better. Like that seems to be the consensus. They all want to start there. So if they're picky eaters, we start them in the picky eating course. It's called Bring the Fun Back to Mealtime. It's all about transitions. And then as they progress, they are able to do nutritional therapy, a self-assessment, understanding where they're lacking with grocery lists so that they know where to start. And I'm a firm believer that we do have multiple different ways of learning. And so the program is made with that in mind. So there's the doers, the thinkers, the feelers, and are like someone like me who's a thinker, and the planners. So there's meal plans for people who want them. There's group coaching calls for people who need to feel good together as a group and who thrive that way, and the doers. So I think that it's really important with our growing community and because people can no longer ignore that plant-based eating is so supportive. And so it's like, how do we do it though? How do we transition? So I usually have this great tip. It's like, if you have one recipe, one day where you're not working as hard and you try that one recipe that's new, and then after 7 weeks, because we are humans, right? We love repetition. We like to rotate the same 7 meals or 10 meals over and over again. I say by the end of 7 to 10 weeks, you'll have a completely different outcome because you'll have implemented one new recipe every single week.
Absolutely. I have my favorite recipe. It's actually my breakfast, which consists of red potato, red beans, garbanzo beans, mushrooms, onions, avocado. I mean, it's just this hodgepodge of vegetables and greens and beans. And I'll tell you, I'm on fire when I eat that. And people are like, you eat that for breakfast? Absolutely. And so that's kind of my go-to. But, I want to take
I have to share. So my husband likes to call my breakfast mushroom slop, and it's very similar to
and you have great energy, and it's like, your body is just saying thank you, thank you, thank you. Because before I became plant-based, I was definitely a sugar addict. I was definitely a carnivore. But I was thinking about this morning, how I don't have the sugar addiction like I used to. I was major sugar addicted, and there's some great books out on the topic of why, because the food manufacturers actually they come up with the perfect formula to get us addicted. I mean, it is like scientific stuff. And I used to buy a box of, I think it was Little Debbie's donuts. I'd buy a box of donuts and I would calculate how long it would take me to eat them. And if anybody dared to eat one of my donuts, I would get upset with them and I'd go back to the store and buy another box just to show them, well, no wonder I put on all that weight and no wonder I was so sluggish all the time. And that's not the case anymore. So I want to take a step back because I recently went through what a lot of people will eventually experience. I lost my mother-in-law and it's been less than 2 weeks. And it was a very, very emotional experience. And I was thinking a detox would be a really good idea for me because detoxes, I find, help me to get really grounded and get more into my spiritual side. So with the detoxes you mentioned that you do a lot of detoxes. Tell us about what a simple detox is, why somebody would do a detox, and then let's go from there.
Oh, I love that. It's actually so interesting because right now I'm actually leading in our friendship center in the Native community that we have here. I'm leading them through a detox that's very simple. And so I go there weekly and we talk about what the simple plans are, and then they can choose to follow a meal plan or they can bring in the concepts. So a simple detox would just be focused on removing what is harming. And that includes and I love how you said it makes you more spiritual, because I never realized that when I became a detox specialist. I never put 2 and 2 together that when you remove things that are harmful, you truly connect more. You become clearer, right? You connect more with everything around you. So the simple version of what a detox would be about looking at your environment. What can you control there that you can remove? Because people assume that detox means like chelation therapy, and that is not the case. We have a very interesting view of what detoxifying is, but detoxing is about creating an environment where you live a low tox life. And then when it's within the body, it's about allowing your detoxification system to do what it's meant to do without overburdening it. So you remove the burden first.
Well, let me ask you this on the detox. Would that include like the news, for example? Would that include, maybe like I love to burn incense. And I was thinking today, is that really healthy for me? Is it, am I putting toxins in my body unknowingly? So what would be like on an environmental level, the start of a detox, and then leading that into what we detox in our refrigerator, our cabinets, our body? So let's dig deep into that.
So in our environment, I love this like resource. It's called the Think Dirty app, and it's not what you think. The name is
no.
funny, but it's been around for so long, and it's completely free. And what's nice about it is it's a scanning system. So you can literally go around and scan your products.
Oh,
It gives you a rating of 1 to 10, 1 being alkaline and 10 being extremely toxic. So
wow.
it's so great. And then the other one that I do recommend when I talk to people about detox is having the EWG. So that's if you go to Google and you just put in Skin Deep Database, you can actually put in the ingredients or the products that you have, and it will do the same. It will give you a rating of 1 to 10.
Okay.
And
so let's take a step back real quick on that. It's the Think Dirty app.
Yep.
Okay. And then it's the Skin Deep
database. Yep.
Database. Okay, excellent. Because I know when I go to the grocery store, or when I go to buy personal products, for example, I take my iPhone and I start looking, is this vegan? Is it cruelty-free? Because there's a difference between cruelty-free and vegan. I didn't know that early on. I thought if something was cruelty-free, it would be vegan, but you can have cruelty-free and it's still not vegan. And it's like, how does that work? But
I know, labeling.
Yeah,
definitely something that they have mastered. Marketers have mastered labeling. I basically do not believe anything on a label unless I've seen all the ingredients. So, and that's it, right? They could write natural on something that has 1 natural product in it.
Okay.
Even though the rest of them are not natural.
Right. Okay. So let's take that step back, because, my ADHD is full blown right now, but quite seriously, I just get so excited about when I learn something new. Let's start again with the detox that you would take somebody through, where you start with their environment, then you get into, the body and all that.
Yes. I focus very much so on safety and feeling good. People have associated detoxing with not feeling good, with having this thing called die off, where as things our fat cells are releasing all these toxins, and like our cell receptors are letting go of these things, that they're going to feel terrible because it's going through the body again. But this doesn't have to be the case. The truth is that when you start with a recalibration protocol, which is basically bringing in so much of the good stuff, like people cannot believe when I tell them how much they can eat on a detox. They're like, what? They're like, I've never eaten this much in my life. I'm losing weight. I feel amazing, because we focus on plants. And so we focus on putting in what's good, removing what's bad. So these are things I call them crap. They're super simple crap. So carbonated drinks, we have refined sugars and refined flours, alcohol, artificial anything, and then processed products.
Okay.
So that's just like the start. That's week 1. Week 2, it's about removing inflammation and inflammatory markers. So our foods, we know that dairy is extremely inflammatory. So for people who are not vegan, they would remove dairy at this point, and gluten also very inflammatory. And then in week 3, they would go plant-based. It's actually a perfect transition into plant-based eating, to be honest. And then they spend a week focusing on very specific, this is the simple version. The simple version would be focusing on whole foods. And then the advanced version would be focused on a mixture of juicing smoothies and whole plant-based foods.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So what's your favorite juice?
My favorite juice, I love a heavy metal detox juice. I have the most results from those ones in my liver juice. And I find they taste pretty good, but I don't love sweets. So for me, it's like, I used to love Clamato juice, and I don't drink that anymore. So I enjoy my liver detox juice. It has beets in it. It has garlic in it. It has ginger in it. So it's very, very vegetable based. There's no sweetness in it at all. And then my heavy metal detox juice is like cilantro, parsley. I love to have cucumber in there. Things that are going to be very powerful at binding to heavy metal toxins within the brain. And they make me feel really clear. Like they taste good, they make me feel clear, and then they make me very energetic.
I love that you brought that up because one of the challenges people have is they're sluggish, they're not focused, they have fuzzy brain, and all of that leads up to, as we get older. I'm going to be 69 in a couple of months, and I think, this is not what I thought 69 was supposed to feel. Thank you. It's like I give it to the plant-based eating, but I look at people that are my age, and a couple of years ago I actually broke my wrist. It was a freak accident. It wasn't brittle bones or anything like that. I mean, I got hit hard on the back of the head by this big one of those tents they put over in a vendor site at an outdoor festival. Got hit on the back of the head with that because of a gust of wind coming up, broke my wrist instantly. Well, as I went through the whole healing process, I was so intrigued by what I saw in other people, just the lack of energy, the lack of passion, the buying into the whole being sick kind of thing, and not judgment, but just reality that we live with, that if people could experience what it feels like to be on a plant-based diet. So leading with that, what about the families that right now they've got kids that are off the charts with ADHD, autism, with all of that, and they don't know what to do because they're not getting support from their doctors, they're not getting support from their family. What are the steps they can take?
So I like to keep it simple for people who like start off their journey. I like to keep it super simple. But the first thing is to note that the more that you can eat the color of the rainbow in plants, and you count plants, and you change your thoughts around how you look at your plate. I don't know if you've seen the Canadian food guide. We have one of the more advanced, I'm going to say advanced food guides. It is predominantly plant-based. So even with people in the States, I work with people all over the world. I kind of show them this image. And I said, I know that this may not be achievable right now, but if you look at what your child's favorite food is, how do you add more plants to it? And that's what we brainstorm. We use what's already working. And then we talk about lifestyle. We focus on sleep. I tell them sleep is a huge component for ADHD and autism. 54% of kids don't sleep well who have autism or ADHD.
Wow.
And yeah, huge numbers. And then also looking at screen time. I just did a podcast for someone who focuses on removing screen time for our kids. It's such a huge impact on dopamine and all of these things. So it's an entire component, right? Building relationships. So when I tell them, it could feel overwhelming. I tell people, look at the one thing, because I like CBT, right? Cognitive behavioral therapy. I tell the parents, look at the one thing that feels the most achievable to change. And usually it's starting with picky eating. And I say, eat the color of the rainbow as often as possible and start to remove the things that you know are harming, because it's like an ecosystem. If I could tell anybody, it's like we're an ecosystem. We house so much microbiota on us and within us, and they actually have as much impact in our life as we do in theirs. So if you were to go on a beach, or you were to go in the Amazon rainforest and you would pollute it, it's going to die.
Right.
And so that means our ecosystem dies. And so when they start to understand these little things, these nuances, that we are basically like the planet. And this is the interesting about our planet. The more we treat ourselves, the more that we heal ourselves, the more we actually can naturally treat the planet the same way. So it is. I've noticed it more and more, that the more that we remove the harm within us, the more that I see people more interested in having impact in the world.
Well, and you just triggered an idea and a thought in me. Does the whole process where people are starting to incorporate more plants and they're being much more conscious about what they're doing, does it improve relationships in the family because maybe people are sitting down and actually eating at a table and doing family time? Is that a part of the mix?
Yeah. It's actually part of lifestyle medicine, which is what we know at the blue zones, the relationships. The reason the blue zones are so powerful is that they do have this deep relationship with each other by eating together. It's not just the food. It's not just the exercise. It's not just, the movement, the sleep, the resilience building. It's also the relationships. It's a combination of all the things. Now, when we start off, there's only 6 pillars. And I usually tell people there are 6 pillars. Try the one that seems the most achievable, where on a scale of 1 to 10, you want it really bad. And because if sleep is being affected and you're one of the kids that gets up at 4 a.m. every day, that's maybe the place to start for you. You have the motivation to change that. Now, on a scale of 1 to 10, is it achievable for you?
Right.
And so we ask this, like, I just really focus on asking those questions. And we try to, again, everything is about simple, daily habits, because jumping over the mountain is not going to get us to the end of the journey. We'll end up burnt out.
Right.
We focus on the journey is the habit, every single consistent action we do in our day to day.
I love it. I love it. Well, one of my habits is actually to read books. And I'm curious, out of all the books that you've read, because it sounds like you've read quite a few, what would you say has been the one book within the plant-based movement that has been the most impactful?
I actually really love Fiber Fueled. I choose this one not because I don't like, How Not to Die or How to Do All, and, Dr. Greger and all of this. Because I actually love his app. Have you ever heard of the Dr. Greger app?
Absolutely.
He really
Absolutely.
does it. I love that. But I like, for people, when I talk to people, I like a book that's going to almost be humorous. People love to feel good, and we learn 400 times faster when we're actually in fun. So when I recommend books, I usually recommend his because he puts a nice flair of fun in it, and people are more receptive to that. And he makes it seem simple.
And who's the author of that?
Dr. Oh my goodness, Dr. B. Bilkowitz.
Okay, we'll make sure that people get the name of that. Absolutely. That's like somebody asked me something. It's like, I don't know. I just know I like it.
We call him Dr. B. His name is so long that people actually just call him Dr. B.
Wonderful. And it's called
he's an enterologist who swapped over to plant-based eating because he could see the benefit. And then he started to teach this to his patients, and he noticed his patients were all getting better. But he has a really great flair. He just spoke at the ACLM, like the Lifestyle Medicine Conference. Hilarious. And I like that.
Wonderful, wonderful. So what are your plans for the future? What do you see yourself and your business associate doing, and just in general, how people will be impacted by the work that you do and the work the rest of us do? We're
going to change healthcare.
I love it.
The idea is that people choose, many of them right now are ready for another option. They're not, and she could see it in her Emerge department when she's trying to navigate, intubating people and then seeing people come in with heart attacks that could have been prevented. She's trying to navigate, teaching them about, and people are so open to it.
Nice.
And so knowing that, having implementation studies such as the one in New York, right? And they have one of the largest lifestyle medicine programs for people. We are doing something similar where we live, with the option of having, many other sites follow suit. That's going to give patients who want it an option that they didn't have before.
I love that. I actually, because when my mother passed away recently, she had gone into the hospital with pneumonia, and I was in her room in the morning when they brought her breakfast, and I looked at it, and it was bacon and eggs. And I'm like, really? And she had an enlarged heart. She had very little lung capacity. And I was like, do you realize that you're, contributing to her illness? I was beyond shocked. And unfortunately, 3 days later, she passed on.
Sorry about that.
Thank you. But for me, it was just such an eye opener that here she had an enlarged heart and very little capacity to even breathe, and they're bringing her bacon, and it's like, what the heck is wrong with them? So I love what you're doing. I just wish you the greatest success. And in closing, Natalie, what are your final thoughts for people? What do you want to leave them with?
I want people to know that plant-based eating is going to revolutionize healthcare, but I also want them to know that it doesn't have to be hard. If you could just do the Meatless Monday to start, right? Just try one meal and evaluate how you feel an hour after that meal. You will naturally progress to this way of eating, just because you feel basic.
I love it. Well, Natalie, this has been delightful, and I encourage people to go to blueliferx.com. That's blueliferx.com. And you've been listening to the Plant-Based Eating for Health show. I wish you much health, much success, and much compassion. This is Kathleen Gage, wishing you a great day.
Thank you for your commitment to an ethical life through plant-based food choices. The kind of choices that are kind to your body, the environment, and most of all, animals. Be sure to leave a review and rating of the Plant-Based Eating for Health podcast show.